Hey guys, welcome to the Dekoni Audio Padcast. I'm Dylan Scarzafava, and this is Tal Kosin, and we're going to talk about why Dekoni does what it does. How do we come about, and what are we doing for the community? So, Tal, um, let's start with the history of Dekoni Audio. How did you come about with the idea to start making ear pads?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Um, it was, I think, 2014. I had a pair of Sony MDR 7506s, classic studio and live sound headphone. If you own a pair, you know that the ear pads fall apart, and if you have a beard, then you get all this little black flakes in your beard. And over years of touring, as a sound engineer, my headphones fell apart. The pads fell apart, right? And so eventually I put them in a drawer, uh, and picked up a couple of other headphones for touring and didn't really settle into anything that I really liked. And so I was going to buy another pair of 7506s. And I was like, I found mine one day and said, I wonder if I could just replace the pads on these. So I started looking, and when I started doing that research, I quickly found that there was really nothing available except for like the stock ear pads, right? Like, or cheaper. So I was like, man, it's like if I'm going to upgrade, if like my stereo breaks in my car, right? Am I going to go back to like Toyota and be like, can I get another one of these crappy stereos?
Yeah.
It's like, no, right? And at that time, right, it was 2014. I'm going to get something that's got like a flip out screen with a DVD player and, whatever, right? Um, and, I started kind of going down this rabbit hole. At the time, I was also running a um, e-commerce store for pro audio equipment, digitaldjgear.com, for all your DJ needs. Um, and we had this idea like, hey, what if we made pads? And I was like, I don't know how to make pads. Um, and then I said, you know what? I'll figure this out. So I ended up going down this rabbit hole, and I had this concept in mind, right? I was like, what's the best part about Beats headphones? It's the ear
Right. That
pads, right?
that at the
The one
time,
thing about, the one thing about Beats at the time, right? Again, this is 2014, right? So Beats are only 3 or 4 years old at that point. Um, and super popular. And, um, the one thing I really liked about them, they use this nice memory foam. They had the squared off pads. Um, it was protein leather, not like that crappy PU leather. And so, I went down this thing of like reaching out to different suppliers. I didn't know what I was doing, reached out to different suppliers and said, hey, um, you sell ear pads. Can you make ear pads for me? And most of them were like, no, we won't do what,
this
you want to do unless you're going to order like thousands
this
upon
was at a
thousands.
time when it was still a little difficult to source
Correct.
things because there wasn't
Yeah.
just Alibaba. You couldn't just go on the internet and talk to them.
Yeah. Well, Alibaba was around and AliExpress was around, but it wasn't quite as easy as you say, right? And so, um, most of the, I reached out to a few vendors and they were like, no, you buy what we have, unless you're buying like 10,000. And I'm like, well, I'm not buying 10,000 because I want something specific. And I wanted it for multiple models. Anyway, so I finally found a supplier who was like, sure, let's do this, right? So I sent over some headphones. I explained to them what we wanted, and they came back with samples, and I was like, wow, these are freaking awesome. And at that point, like I had my, you know, Beats pads for my Sony 7506. I was psyched. And you know what? I still have those headphones today. And I bought those in 1998, and they still
Uh,
work. They still work
yeah,
great.
they're a great
They're a
headphone. I
workhorse.
mean, that's an industry staple for a reason.
Yeah. So anyway, I then moved on to packaging, and I'm trying to figure out how to package these. I wanted to release this as like a premium product, right? Because that's what it is. Dekoni Audio is premium, and it has been since the very beginning. And the first thing that I thought was like thinking about all of the iPhone boxes I had in my closet, and iPad boxes, and MacBook boxes, because they're just too nice to throw away, right? I still have them in my closet, and I don't even know why. I'm like, I could put stuff in here. I never put stuff in there. But anyway, I own them still. And I was like, I want to package these like an iPhone, right? And so we got these fancy little boxes with a little magnet clip, feels good. Box costs, a lot, but it's part of the thing. And so I then had my Beats pads in my Apple box. And we started selling them. And our first idea, me coming from Pro Audio, was like, I want to sell these into Pro Audio. So it was like the Sony pads / ATH M50X pads, Buyer pads, and a couple of other DJ pads that didn't really do well from the beginning. But
this is at a time when headphone audiophile wasn't as big as it was now, right? Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
So,
This is when mass drop, I should say, was growing, right? This is when it was like in its heyday too. And so there was a huge audiophile community there. And we knew those guys there, and we brought this to them, and they said, yeah, sure, let's try it. And very quickly, we started getting emails from people saying, hey, do you sell earpads for the Odyssey LCD 2? And I'm like, what's the Odyssey LCD 2?
right.
Right.
So
it was like all these other headphones.
You were thinking Pro Audio, but
right.
You didn't realize that there was this whole other market.
Totally.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
100%. Yeah. And we quickly found that, we then got picked up, there was a lot of cross posting from Mass Drop to Headfi. And we grew quickly, right? And all of a sudden it was like, we're piling boxes of pads in our little office, going like, oh my God, like we need a bigger space.
Oh yeah.
And like I would end up, at the end of the day, after working like with this e-commerce company, like packing out 50 pairs of ear pads into boxes to ship.
It was a
I'm like,
lot.
oh my God.
Because you had brought me on to Bastrop was doing these bulk orders. Right? Yeah, just to pack. Yeah. You were like, we need someone to pack orders. I said, yeah, I got some time. That office was really small too. I mean, it was piled with ear pads.
Yeah, and so from there, we started doing the can jams for Headphone, and again, it's just like it kind of snowballed, right? We launched our first product in January of 2015, and by 2016 into 2017, like we had blown up, and so we found a hole in the audiophile market that honestly at the time I didn't even know was there. I was not even thinking it. And that blew up to where we are today, right? And so over the last bunch of years, we were releasing more and more ear pads for all these different headphones, really getting a name for ourselves. We were well, I'll go through a little bit like sort of the development process, like how we do it today. But we were doing measurements and that kind of stuff and posting them, and the community really liked that. Let's see. I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, so, you were trying to bring stuff to the market that people needed. And these audiophiles, or, which we're audiophiles now, is they were looking for a product and it wasn't there. Because, we always have that conversation with people, is that the manufacturers, the last thing they think of is ear pads.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
in the first place, it's the first place the accountants say you need to cut.
Right. Make it more affordable. on the for you guys to sell it and make more money on it. So, you know, a lot of manufacturers weren't worried about the ear pad or the science of ear pads. So this happy accident of you were just trying to make better ear pads, you did found a market and started providing them the things that they needed, and the success came from that. Finding a problem and fixing it, um, and not just your problem, other people's problems. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why we do what we do. Is we try to help people find make better sound signatures, make more comfortable headphones, and with the ensemble cables, make cables easier. Just trying to um, make headphone listening as enjoyable as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think over time, right, we were just a replacement ear pad company, right? It was like we made ear pads, and that was really it. Um, I did the project with Fostex for the Dekoni Blue, which was great. We sold a bunch of those, and that was a pretty fun project. That was when like everybody was still modding T50 RPs and the good old days. And you know, then we made the Dekoni Cobalt with Hi-Fi Man, right? That was I had a hiatus with the company for a few years, um, and Dylan had taken over here, and we did the Cobalt, and then you know at the same time, there were cases that were launched, there were some cables that were launched. Of course, we had the Bullets ear tips. How could we leave out the Bullets ear tips? Um, and we really have expanded into the only premium like whole headphone accessory company in the space. Like there's nobody else doing everything the way that we do it today. I'll also say that the brands since our introduction, and I'm not saying I'm taking credit for this, but since the introduction of our brand, manufacturers of headphones have upped their earpad game. And I think some of that is because of what we did and sort of what the customer experience was like with our pads.
Well, I would say we found a market, started supplying for it, and then others started realizing that it was there because of us. Would you say that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I um just and then all of these other brands tried to follow in our footsteps once they realized it was possible to do what we
Right.
do.
And
That's
we're talking
awesome.
about the other headphone brands, not
Yeah.
not like there's some other like earpad brands out there that are doing similar to what we're doing, but they're doing it. Most of them are doing it on a much lower scale, more mass market scale. And they're just doing earpads, right?
Right.
So,
We focus on a lot of stuff that's not entirely I would say almost profitable for us. It's almost we're doing it for the love of headphones. Some of the lower produced headphones, I would say maybe like the Sony Z1R, that's not an amazing seller for us, but we support the headphone because people have asked for it and it makes people appreciate what we do.
right,
Yeah.
true. So that's kind of the story of like how we started, um, and kind of how we got to where we are today, right? And I think the development process today is different than it was then, right? We sort of initially started out, it was like, I want the Beats pads for my Sonys, right? And then it became a little more nuanced, which was like, okay, how do we, let's talk to the user base, right? Let's say the HD600, for example, right? People had, some minor gripes about the 600 and the sound. And this was, I think this was before a lot of the other variants of it came out. And so, we came out and did, some pretty extensive testing and measurements of these different variants of pads. Um, so when we released them, we were also solving not only a comfort problem, but a sonic issue that people were having with those headphones, right?
Well,
And so it's like people then gravitated towards our fenestrated sheepskin, right, and our elite velour pads for that particular model because it solved some of those issues that people had.
let's talk about those issues. I mean, I bought an HD600. It's the entry level staple audiophile headphone, and the ear pads. they're they're okay, but the clamp force and the way they're around it almost feels like they're uh I wouldn't say stabbing you, but it's a lot of pressure on your head and it can be uncomfortable for long listening. And when you have headphones on, you might be working in the office. So that's one of the things that I had most issue with that our ear pads take care of. And I know that you there's the memory foam that we have, but also the different style of shape, the flat ear pads. Why did you come to the flat ear pad uh, position? What's
Versus the
important about that?
round.
Yeah, what's important about the ear
Well,
pads being flat?
I think there's a contact. Uh, there's a contact thing there, and there's an isolation element to it, and a comfort issue, right? It's the um, it's that memory foam, right? It's the heat activated memory foam that we use. The greater, the more surface area that you actually contact, um, the more comfortable ultimately they're going to be because they kind of melt into your face a little bit. Um, and so I think between that and isolation, um, that's part of the square. Also, they look really cool.
Talking about cool ear pads, surprisingly, I'm wearing the pink ear pads right now, the pink
Mm,
flannel. You know, ear pads are. I've noticed that ear pads aren't exactly an aesthetic thing. They're really a um, workhorse that like I want my earpads to be comfortable. I want them to sound good. People don't necessarily care how the earpads look. Um,
true.
which is a interesting thing because I've made different colors just to test, and boy oh boy, people are more worried about the sound signature. Um, which is an interesting thing. It's like audiophiles are very particular in that regard. Um, and it's not, oh, let me get the fancy headphones. It's like, no, I really just want them to sound good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. Yeah, I think you get into the gaming market and things change a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
let's
yeah,
talk
no, I
differences
agree with that.
in markets actually. I would, you know, it's interesting the differences in opinions and of people who are gaming, people working from home, people who just get noise canceling headphones. Like even geographically different markets, and trying to serve as many people as we can. Um, what would you say? Um, what would you say is like the hardest thing? Losing my train of thought, but it,
Hardest thing to get into like gaming?
yeah, well, not even gaming, just trying to balance our releases in terms of serving our core audiophile audience,
Mm.
as well as serving the I would say retail audience, consumer, like Best Buy. You get your Sony noise canceling, your Bose canceling, as well as trying to serve gamers. Like, what are the differences and how hard is it to juggle
Yeah.
manufacturing
I
for the
think you're
different
getting
markets?
into the business side of it as well, which is
Yeah,
as much fun as we want to have doing what we do. It's
yeah,
a business, and if we want to keep the doors open, we got to do certain things, right? It's like the there's certain headphones that we've released earpads for, really to satisfy our audience, right? Things like
yeah,
you already brought up C1R. Like we don't sell
yeah.
a ton of those, but
Susvara.
yeah, but
Yeah,
people expect it, and the odd person buys it and whatever. Um, but there are sort of the heavy movers, right? And so it's like in the pro audio space, right? It's like our buyer pads are super popular, right? Our ATHM 50X pads and Sony pads are super popular. You go into the mass market, we've released all the XM series headphone earpads except for the first one. So XM2, 3, 4, 5, working on 6 right now. And we're working on that with a new material that I think is going to make quite an impact with that audience and with our audience. Um, and something that the mass market audience is, those products are, when you get to that level, when you get to mass market and gaming, I think this is where they kind of dovetail a little bit. People care less about quality and more about, I say quality, sorry, less about, having sheepskin versus like a protein leather, right? Um, less about, I'd say less about, kind of the sound, because I think the uninitiated don't know as much, don't really know what
Yeah,
to listen for, or they
if
don't
you
really have an
don't
opinion.
if you don't know what an expensive headphone sounds like, how do you know what you're missing?
Right.
Uh,
I'm even just saying the difference between stock pads and like, a pair of cheap XM5 pads, right? Um, and so at that point, you start to fall into the price, right? And that is sort of where, I'm not going to say we lose, but that's where, the difference comes between us and some of our competitors, is that they're selling cheap replacement ear pads and they're selling a lot of them, right? But that isn't necessarily what we do. We want to cater to the more discerning customer, right? We want to sell a more high-end product. Um, and, we might sell less, but, at the end of the day, ours cost more, therefore we make a little more. So it kind of balances out, but that does make it harder to break into mass market, and especially to gaming, right? We've tried that. It's like the burn rate of headphones in gaming. It's like every week there's a new headphone that's out
oh,
that's super
oh yeah,
popular. And, once you make a pad for one, by the time we get it like developed and produced and, all that, um, you put
the
it out, then
new
it's like, well, nobody likes that headphone anymore. Now they want this one. And it's like, oh my God, like,
yeah.
what happened?
I step into GameStop once a week, um, just to because I grade cards and I look at the headphone wall all the time, and it's like, what are these headphones? There's so many different options, and the people come in and they go, which one should I get? And I'm like, and I'm sitting there, I know the employees, and I'm like, they look to me, I'm like, to be honest, you should probably buy the one you can afford, because all of these
Right.
are going to be. It doesn't matter that they're all blend together. There's just too many of them. For someone who knows
Right.
headphones, it's like it's a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you though, because you spend a lot of time developing, right? And you come up with these great ideas, and you hope to have your babies, flourish. And with the ensemble cables, at the start, it was kind of a slow thing. You had come up with this idea for the split cable connection, right? I got it here.
Yeah.
And this is to, everybody has a spaghetti cable bin, or you have
True.
cables all over the place from your headphones. And we wanted to simplify that. And at the start, it didn't catch on. And now there's a couple of reasons why we think it didn't catch on, but this past um, Can Jam, it really took off once people understood how good does it feel to help people solve an issue, and to see the hard work pay off.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I was just talking to my therapist about this yesterday. Because,
Hi,
you know,
sit down on the couch.
right. Look, I have, there's been some good ideas. There's been more bad ideas than good ideas, and I think that's pretty common. Um, I think my first good idea were the nuggets, right? And that was a total shower thought. Like, just like, oh my God, what if we made like a little, just like a little pad that could go under a headband, like, you know, um, that was sort of my first, like, well, the company, I guess, was a success, of sorts, but that was my first, like, kind of cool, different idea. Um, and, I've, between here and where I was before, I put out a lot of products, and, you know, a lot of them kind of fell flat. Um, and it's just kind of the nature of the beast. And so the ensemble cable, I had this idea when I first came back to the company. So I left 2019. I came back in 2023. And when I came back, I had this idea. I wanted to, um, really, I saw, you know, growing the business by 2 times a uh, difficult thing to do,
Yes.
right? Because
So
we're sort of maxed out with the audience, right? It's like we were at this point where it's like, what else could we do? How else can we
I
do
agree with
this?
that
And so
100%.
I was like, I want to get into like proper cables. And I'd had this thought before, and I know there's other companies out there that do this, and um most of that stuff is custom. It's whatever, right? It's they use good materials, but it's all off the shelf stuff. It was different than the way we're doing it, though I will say, since we released ours, they have adapted a lot more to the way we're doing it. Which I think tells me we're doing something right. What we did though is I wanted to design something that looked cool, was super functional, um, that had something different about it. And so it was like, I want to make a modular cable, and I want it to split at the splitter, right? With the natural point where everything wires together. You have your little click and twist. And so I got with an industrial designer. Really, for the first time with this company, we employed an industrial designer to help us design something. And I said, here's what I want. Um, and so, they tinkered and came up with some ideas and put it together. And, out came, this pretty cool looking, here, I have one here somewhere.
Triangle twist.
You have one there? Uh,
I'm wearing it right now. This it makes my life very convenient, by the way, because
right,
I have to switch between headphones all day, and I just go,
right. Yeah. So what we came up with was this really cool design. It's an aluminum, sorry. It's an aluminum housing. And you twist it. It's got a 2.5 millimeter connector, or is it 2.8 millimeter? I forget. Buried in there. Um, and the connector itself is not the most robust connector, which is kind of, I think, why it's lost out to the Pentacon. But if you bury it in, molded plastic and aluminum, it ain't going anywhere. And so you put it together, and we had this idea for a reverse strain relief, which looks super cool and is super functional, right? Because the strain relief is meant to, relieve the strain on the solder points, right? And on the wire itself, right? If you have something that's just going to be a straight kind of out and down, well, you've got that wear point there. Well, this actually has some curve to it, and so it's functional, and it's pretty cool looking. So we released this in November of last year, almost a year ago. And I was super excited about it. I was like, we got this awesome product. And it
right.
reminds me of the meme where there's the guy like poking the thing with a stick. Where I was like, come on, do something. Like we had shown it at Can
we,
Jam, and it did
we're
like people liked it.
it's solving a problem that we had, with how many headphones we have to do testing on, and it was hard to get people on board with understanding how it would help them. Um,
Yeah,
that was a huge hurdle.
I think it also shows not I mean, yes and no. We showed them at Can Jam SoCal last year, and people really liked them. They're like, wow, these are cool. When are they coming out? We showed them. We actually started selling them in Can Jam Dallas last year, and we sold a few. I think what I underestimated, there were multiple things, I think, but one of them was that I underestimated how hard it has become to market a new product today. I think that's a huge thing that, doesn't really get talked about. But, these days, I mean, there's so much noise everywhere, right? Political noise, product noise, like, I open up, Facebook and I get all these ads for random stuff. And, um, it's hard for anything to stick out, much less, a product that's, being marketed to a fairly niche audience. And so, we post it in the usual places and things like that. But, the way you market has changed. Even in the last couple of years, it's drastically changed and it's become a lot harder. Because there's just more and more noise every day, especially with AI. Now there's AI. Now there's like, just, they say that like over half the traffic now on the internet is AI generated.
Yes, the dead
You know,
internet theory.
exactly. Yeah. It's going to
Yeah.
start learning from itself and then it's going to collapse our society if it doesn't kill us all first and take us over and use us as batteries. But anyway,
Yes, Terminator and The
yes.
Matrix.
um, so yeah, that's a combination of Terminator and Matrix. So yeah, I mean, it's taken a while, but now, it took about 6 months before people started to take notice. And then over the last few months, it's really started to grow and grow and grow to where now, our distribution network is buying it, which means that their customers want it because,
Yeah.
let's be
A lot
honest,
of
in a business, your distributors aren't going to buy something that nobody wants. And so they're starting to buy it. And so it's growing. And so now it is starting to feel like a success because for a while I was like, oh man, like another dog, another failure.
uh
I
well,
was like ready to hang up my
industrial
hat.
industrial designers are expensive, tooling is
Yeah.
expensive. It was a
Yeah.
huge undertaking to make
Right.
a cool product.
Right. And I still don't think we paid it off yet, but we will. I think we also released a bunch of new connectors. Like we started out simple, right? It was like 4.4 millimeter and quarter inch and like XLR 3.5 and HC600 for the connectors. And, again, it's like each one of these, if you get into the development process, um, each plastic part, basically to make a tool, which is essentially a cool, like transformer looking mold to make for injection molding for plastic costs $2,000 to $5,000 per piece. Right. So, like, this little thing right here to get all these plastic parts, and there's inner molds and outer molds, they're called. So it's like, there's like four, it's like 10 grand, right? It's like, that's not cheap for, this, right? Now, out of that $10,000, I can make like 500,000 of these things. So there's that. But if 500,000 people don't want them, then it's money spent, right? And so, but then you add that up against, across all those different connectors, and it adds up quick. And so very
Yep.
quickly you could spend $100,000 on
You
just
gotta really
the development of the plastic parts.
you really have to believe in your product to put this
Right.
much behind it. But
And that goes for any product, right? I mean, that even goes for a phone case, right? Or something you see, it's like something like this, like my, I have a wallet, right? It's like a phone wallet thing. I look at this thing. It's like funny. I look at things now and I go, how much do I think that cost to develop?
the
Yeah,
Ridge wallet.
exactly. Um, but anyway, so with the ensemble cables, like now we have, for amplifiers, we have XLR, right? And we've added the 1/8-inch jack. And so now we have kind of all the amplifier connectors covered, minus like, maybe the electrostat and 2.5 millimeter, which isn't really used much anymore. It's going out. It's out of business. And then for headphones, right, we've released more there too, right? We released the Limo connector for the Foci Utopia that we got asked for. Actually today, well, by the time you hear this, it might be in production, but today I'm actually getting the connectors for the Dan Clark Audio headphones, which
Hyros.
I have been
Yes.
waiting for. We had got, again, we had gotten a sample before and it wasn't right. So we had to go back. We had to do some fixes to it. So hopefully this one's right. that's the other thing with making plastic injection parts is if the part isn't, if there's an issue with the part that's made, you then have to pay another $1,000 to modify that tool so you get the right part you want. So that can all snowball too. But anyway, so the high rose connector's coming. We have MMCX and 2-pin now. We are working on a USB-C with a with a high grade DAC and amp in it. So you'll be able to take your ensemble cable on the go, which I'm pretty excited about. And that should be coming pretty soon as well. I think maybe by end of year or early next year we'll have that in stock. So it's growing. The sales are growing, and I see more and more success from that product coming, which makes me happy because that grows, that grows the business, and the bigger the business gets, the more cool stuff we could put out
Yeah,
and
the
design
side
and create. And,
projects. Yeah. Because I
that's
I
part of
have a
the
I have
good.
a whole list of an Excel sheet. I'm the customer service representative. You talk to me when you send emails. And I get so many requests every month, and they go, I need today, Dan Levinson, or I want a 5909. I go, okay, well, it goes into the spreadsheet, and hopefully we get to it. I would love to do your project. I would love to have ear pads for you, but sorry, we just don't have it at this time. So being
Is
able to
that the
do these.
super expensive, like Dan Levinson headphone?
Right. And maybe there's like less, if it's super expensive, there's probably less than 1,000 out there. And
Yeah.
we have to put a lot of work into getting that stuff out there. But,
Yeah.
when our audience asks for it, we want to go towards it. We want to give it to you, which brings me to what I wanted to talk about next. The ensemble cables was something that you wanted to do. Let's talk about projects that our audience wanted and that we made happen.
Okay.
I mean, even just we comb forums, we watch videos, we're try to be as part of the community as much as we can with our day jobs and our outside lives. And one of the things that we came about making was actually this foam kit, which is an interesting story right now. I'm watching Zio's Pantera, watching Z reviews, just background noise, and he goes, man, wouldn't it be nice if somebody made a tuning foam kit and I could just grab the foam kit out, or the foam, and just put it into my headphone and tune my headphones? And I go, Dekoni makes foam and we sell stuff. I put it together and we came out with this foam kit. We have plenty of them. Now, are they one of our best sellers? No, but
I don't know.
people
Today they
buy.
might be.
Well, that's part
But
of the
that's another
story
story.
is,
Yeah.
it really was just a request that Zios wanted it. So I assumed if Zios wanted it, a bunch of other people might need something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a huge undertaking to do that. It's just sheets of foam, stuff that we already make, and we just put it out there. And if you want it, you can get it, and we'll support you through your tuning thing. I mean, going back to the Fostex T50, everybody was modding them and adjusting them, and we're just offering support for a community like that. And
Mm-hmm.
but at some point or another, again, DMS designed his Omega headphone, and he's like, I need some foam. I need to do something with the sound signature. So I said, oh, I have this tuning kit. I'll send you a couple. He comes to find a foam inside of it that works out to fit the sound signature he was looking for, and it became a part of his design. And now people are purchasing this. We sold a couple. We sell a couple of foam kits, but now it's selling a lot more because people want to design and make their own headphones. So these are some of the things that we do, outside of making the stuff that we want, is just putting our ear to the ground, like we're listening for the train.
Yeah.
Tal, do you have you must have a story about, someone mentioned something to you, like, wouldn't it be cool? And you took it and ran with it.
I mean, that's I mean, look, that's how kind of the company started, right? I mean, we of course we were doing the pro audio thing and doing that, and then as people in HeadFi and Mass Drop caught on, they were like, "Do you make pads for the Abyss Diana, or do you make pads for the LCD2s? Do you make pad?" And it was like all of a sudden we were getting emails daily. It was like, man, we gotta make these.
Yeah.
Um, I mean that's how we grew, right? It really was through audience participation and sort of crowdsourcing in a way, right? And I think it's smart as a company for us to keep our ear to the ground and kind of keep going. I think something that Dylan, you had this idea, I think, based on like people asking for it, the Mag Deck,
Yeah, so that was
right?
Reddit, every now and then someone will post, "Hey, look at this cool thing I have." And they're like, I really wish it was easy to get and available. So we designed a mag deck holder for our phones. I mean, I've had that, previously, years yonder, people would just take rubber bands and strap their DAC, whatever their audio device was, to their phone because you don't have a 3.5 millimeter anymore. And that's kind of an annoying way to operate your phone with your music, is have a rubber band over the screen. So, and then you put the dongle DAC in, and again, back to the strain relief thing, that cable is probably going to get ruined. You're going to ruin
Right.
USB-Cs or your lightning cables. It's annoying having to palm the DAC in your hand. So just having a MagSafe thing that'll hold it and kind of help with the strain relief was a thing that we wanted to offer to people. So it made their listening a little bit more convenient on the go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Buy
yeah,
your Mag Deck today
yeah.
at
I feel like this is
DekoniAudio.com.
uh, it,
www.DekoniAudio.com.
it's a
4
huge,
easy payments of $9.99. Just kidding.
it
Please
feels
allow
like we're
6 to
just
8 weeks for delivery.
feels like we're advertising, but really a
I
lot
know.
of it is just design. But we have 10 minutes left, and I wanted to, if you, I don't know if you want to keep talking about why we do what we do, but there is a little bit of drama surrounding the new AirPods
Mm,
release.
hmm
Um, so this peaked with a
There's like
Linus Tech.
enemies being made.
I wouldn't say enemies because I wouldn't say enemies because everyone's kind of friendly with each other in this space. There's not really. It'd
Frenemies.
be. You'll know the audiophile community is peaked when there's people slinging stuff back and forth on YouTube for real drama. But Linus Tech Tips came out with the AirPods Pro 3 review and said they were dog water. That's the nice way of saying. Um, and part of the reference was from them changing the tuning. The tuning was tuned to be a little bit more brighter and a little bit more bassier, more in favor of the brightness. And the Super Review came out with his own video with a little bit of a rebuttal. And again, everybody is we're all it's like we're all scientists here. We're all testing stuff and trying to make sure it's that doesn't sound right. My testing has found this. Um, so he said that I don't believe Linus's review is correct. Here's my own measurements. It's not as bright as he's saying it is. Now, that made a response from DMS, and DMS goes, "No, I don't think you're measuring it right. It actually is bright." Um, and then Critical came out with his own review, also saying it is pretty bright. So, like, AirPods Pro 2 is my number one recommended IEM for anybody. Anybody who goes, "Hey, you're a headphone guy. What do I get?" I go, "Just get the AirPods Pro 2. You'll be happy." I haven't heard the AirPods Pro 3 yet. I mean, you have them in your hand because we're designing tips.
I have in
What's your
my ear.
opinion? Yeah, they're in your ear right now. What's your opinion on the sound signature change? Because it's a divisive thing right now.
Personally, I like
Yeah.
it. And I think there's two things at play. And maybe I'll jump into the fray. There's the Dunning-Kruger effect, I think, happening, which the definition of that is the tendency for people who have little ability in or knowledge of a particular task or the subject to overestimate their knowledge or ability in that area. And I don't mean that as any disrespect. I'll get to that in a sec. But then I think there's also the issue with the Fletcher-Munson curve, right? So, and I think one of the reviews I saw did take this into account, but the equal loudness contours, right? As something gets lower in volume, right, your perceived bass and treble gets lower, right? And as it gets higher, it gets higher. And something they specifically did with the AirPods Pro 3 is that they did something to account for that, right? And so I think as it gets louder, your treble's going to go up and your bass is going to go up, and that's where it's V-shaped. And I'd say it's more of a U shape, but anyway, I personally like them. I liked the AirPod Pro 2. Of course, when you combine, do they sound like a pair of LCD2s? Do they sound like a pair of whatever, Campfire Andromedas? No, of course not, right? Like you can't even come into the conversation with that in your mind, right? And if that's what you're thinking, yeah, they're going to sound like dog water because you're comparing them to something that's incomparable, right? You're not comparing apples to apples. I think that's one thing. The other thing is, Apple, I read something a couple of years ago, and it's probably gone up since then, but Apple spends in like 2021 or something, Apple spent like $400 million on AirPod development alone that year. That's like over $1 million a day, right? They actually spent more on development, R&D, than the next three competitors make in revenue on true wireless earphones, right? So like think about that. And if you still think Apple doesn't own some of the best experts in acoustics, I think you're probably fooling yourself. Now, they, at my previous job, right, I was working for a hearing aid company running a couple of consumer brands for them. We did some hearing aid work with a few universities, and Apple was in every single one of them doing various research projects with audiology, right? And with the audiology departments at these universities. They're doing things, I think, again, like this is also part of the problem, right? They don't say anything. They're a total black box. And so, I'm sure that they are doing things in their research that most of these other companies can't even imagine being able to afford doing, right? I'll also say this, Linus might say they sound like dog water, but I think there's probably, 500 million people that would disagree, right? Who own these things. Now, are the audiophiles? No, right? Are they buying AirPod Pros because they have the best ANC on the market, which I agree. I've listened to a lot of them, and currently, like, these things are amazing. They have the best transparency mode on the market, right? I can turn these things into transparent. I literally forget I'm wearing them.
Yeah.
They're also wireless. They last, all day. I think there's that convenience factor, right? There's, of course, the Apple name. That's why people also buy them, because they're in that Apple ecosystem and they work with all the Apple products. But I do think Apple knows something we don't know. And I also would not be surprised. I know that there's these theories around how to measure these things, right? There's, you have to use, some sort of capacitive material behind them, right? There's so much DSP packed into these things that, now, they also say, you need to play program material before you actually take a measurement, because it has the forward facing mic that measures, what's in the ear canal, right? But that's in my mind, that is guesswork in a way of like, how should we measure these to get an accurate response? I think there's a lot of, this is where the Dunning-Kruger effect comes in. I think there's a lot of people that are so used to hearing measurements that they measure first, listen later, and then of course they hear what they see. Um, and then they go, well, these things suck because they're V-shaped. But like, I don't know. I put these things in my ear. They're different. Like if you compare them to the AirPod Pro 2, yeah, they have more highs. And if you're used to the AirPod Pro 2, yeah, they're going to have more highs. But like, there's another factor here is that our brains, adjust over time to things. It's like getting back to hearing aids. When you put a hearing aid in your ear, you hear everything, right? You hear the air conditioning is suddenly super loud. You hear like a door close, like on the other side of the house. But over time, your brain learns to tune the stuff out that it doesn't need to amplify, right? That it doesn't need more sound from, and then they sound more natural. And I would not be surprised if a lot of Apple's research is based around not a
Psychoacoustics.
measurement, but the psychoacoustics of listening for longer periods and your brain settling into the sound. Because, if I think about it today, do I think they sound like, is the high frequencies the same? Do I think it sounds the same as it did when I bought them? I'm not really sure, to be honest. But I will say there were things that I noticed before that I'm not noticing now, but I'm still noticing more detail in them, right? So it's like, I think maybe what some of these reviewers should do is, instead of buying them, putting them in their 5128 and being like, these things suck, they should buy them, put them in their ears and listen for like a month. Yeah. And wrap their head around the sound, right? I feel like that's also, and again, like now we're getting off topic. I'm getting off topic and I might piss people off, but all 6 of our listeners. But, like back in the old days, like back when like Tile Hertzens was doing reviews, right?
We buy records at the record stores.
Yeah. I had onions on my belt. Tile would listen to a headphone for a while, like a couple weeks before he would even start to review it, right? To let it settle in, to let his brain settle into the sound. I think today, first of all, there's so many models coming out all the time that today everybody is like, the reviewers get it, put it on their 5128 or whatever, hit measure and go, here you go. Here's my review. Listen to it for 5 minutes and go, I don't like this. And so it's like everybody wants that instant gratification and that instant kind of hit. And I think that in general, it would be wise for not only reviewers, but I think the audiences in general to like spend some time with things and let yourself settle into them. Like, don't just sit there and analyze every single song. Like, listen to music that you like to listen to, right? Listen for the enjoyment of listening to music. Like, I feel like that's also something that gets away from people, is like, they don't listen to music for the sake of listening to music. They listen to music so they can hear their headphones. But then it's like, I don't know, to me, that's boring. Like, I mean, I love music, right? That's why I got into this business. And I listen to music because I like them. I mean, any high-end headphone I can put on and probably enjoy a few records with it, right? Because I'm not sitting there going, God, man, I wish, and look, I come from a recording background. I've done live sound for 25 years. I've worked in recording studios. Like, I know what good sounds like. Right. To me, again, that's to me. And it doesn't always sound like it measures, right? When I was in school, I had one of my instructors that always say, because we'd be like, well, what if I do this with the EQ? And he'd go, look, if it sounds good, it is good, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, the best engineers that are making records, a lot of what they do is not based on, you know, using this piece of equipment and doing this with the EQ. I mean, they are, but they're doing that out of feel because they know what they like, and what they like translates to what other people like.
The
If it sound, and that's
uh,
where if it sounds good, it is good. And I think
that's yeah.
getting
So
back to like headphones and the AirPod 3 specifically, um, I like them. I think
mhm.
that everybody has been way too quick to jump to review them. And I get it. It's the next hot new product.
There's
Everybody wants their
incentive.
advertising money. Yeah.
Yeah, there's incentive
Um,
there.
and so I get it, and um, that said, Dekoni Audio is working on ear tips for these already. But
Yeah.
again, that's a different thing, right? That is a accessory to these things. That is not saying these sound bad or these sound good. That is saying, you know, we can hopefully make them more comfortable, right? For some people. Um, but again, like, I don't know. I think on the reviews on these, people should hit the pause button and just chill, or buy a pair and listen to them. And if you really don't like them, return them. Um, I don't know. People are too quick to just like shit on something and walk away, because that affects what other people think, and we're all different.
Hmm.
I was
Uh,
reading something
sound
about the
bites
yeah, there
dangerous.
was um
Sound bites are
I
dangerous in the audiophile world.
yeah, the I was about to say, I read something recently. Oh, it was about the Harman chart. Actually, I think it might have been something that Sean Olive posted on Facebook, about basically saying that, like, what people don't take into account about the Harman target is that while 64% of respondents um, liked the target that was created at that time, what they didn't take into account was, during that research, he found different age groups like different targets, and different genders like different targets. And so that 64% was actually within like a certain age group and males. And so if you take that out of the picture, it's totally different. And in fact, and I think he didn't make this point, but I think sort of what he was saying was like, people shouldn't be just using this target. Like, it's
Yeah.
not meant to just be a target. And I think now that he's not at Harman, he's able to like I see him more on Facebook. Like, he'll post somebody's review and like kind of dog it,
He's
and
on
just sort of say like, hey, I like, this isn't quite what was meant. And he wasn't doing that before he left Harman. And so,
he's on Blue Sky too. Yeah. He
yeah.
does
So,
that.
again, it's like, and then everybody has their target, and now it's like everything has to match a target or it sucks. Well, this is outside the target, so it sucks. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, it's outside your target. To
Right.
you, if it sounds good, it is good. Okay, fine. But that doesn't mean it matches to me, right? Or you, or to this guy over here. And so I think by reviewers saying something objectively sucks, they're actually, you know, stopping people from buying a product that they might actually like,
Mhm.
right? And that's kind of against the ethos of our whole uh, community. And I think that's something we've lost, right? Is that like overall community vibe of, you know, um, swapping opinions on things, right? And having a true discussion about it, not just sort of being a talking head saying this sucks. And that's a societal thing in general, right? It's like,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, I think I think we're about out of time. Do you have
It
anything to
all
add to that? I just like
it
went on a whole
all
rant about
well,
measurements and
I wanted to hear your
headphones, but
opinions on the AirPods Pro 3, and I got your opinions on the AirPods Pro 3.
and more.
So this again, this all audiophile, I would say, to summarize that, audiophile all boils down to you need to listen to it.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. And
I wish
you need to
measurements weren't so easy to make, to be honest.
you need to go to an audio show and listen for yourself. Find a local meetup. There's some on HeadFi. I know Z Reviews does it on his forum. Hi-Fi Guides, find a forum, find a community, go listen to everybody else's equipment and share your opinions. because
Right.
at the end of the day, the sound bites are dangerous. And
Yeah.
a lot of
Listen to
times,
multiple opinions.
yeah, a lot of times people will run with the one sound bite. It'll blow up on Reddit, and then people will just run with that. And you have to imagine 95% of the people talking about the headphone have never heard the headphone.
Yeah.
So keep
It's
that in
true.
mind.
Yeah,
Um,
it's true. It's like a game of telephone.
yeah, and it gets skewed as it
Yeah.
goes down the line until people then a good product ends up being a dud, which is unfortunate. But it's the beast that we live in right now.
Yeah. It's funny, I
Um,
have just one anecdotal thing on
sure.
that is that the 08E1, I think, is one of those headphones, right? It
Yes,
got
actually,
dogged by, the
people.
people in the community that other people listen to. Now that enough time has passed, enough people have actually listened to the headphone. Um, if you go to like the HeadFi thread, there's a super long HeadFi thread about it. And it's almost like a gradient from bad to good. It's like it started out like people shit talking it, um, to now it's people saying like, man, I wish I didn't sell it. I need to buy
Yeah,
another one. I think this sounds great. I think, what he's doing is awesome. And, it's like all of that bad vibe came from a couple of bad reviews. And
initial opinions.
yeah, right.
Uh,
And I think even before that, there were specific people in the community that were shitting on it for no good reason, like vocally and aggressively.
yeah,
It was unnecessary. But anyway, I will say, as another shameless plug, I guess, there's a new version coming out that we did have at Can Jam. And I will say, some of those naysayers from the last one heard it and were like, wow,
yeah.
okay, like,
I pulled one of them aside,
here
and they
you
were like,
go.
"Hey, what's new?" And I was like, "Have you heard this new thing from Grell?" And they were like, they sat down and had a
Yeah.
long listen.
So it's, again, it's like, I think that goes to like, take time, listen to something, um, and buy Dekoni earpads and accessories.
Shameless
Always.
plug.
For everything. For everything. Everything's better with Dekoni. That should be our new slogan. Everything's better with Dekoni.
Yeah, and send me your emails. Seriously, go on the website and tell me what you think was good, what was bad. I take note of it. It goes in. We have spreadsheets for the stuff now, so we can keep track of what you guys want, what you guys are feeling, and we can make the products that you want, not just us. Um, so I think I'll carry us out with this one. This has been the Dekoni Audio Podcast. I'm Dylan. This is
And I'm
Tall,
tall.
and yeah, are you tall? You're
I'm
pretty
tall.
tall in person. Yeah,
I'm
you're
6
tall.
foot.
It's the name matches the person.
True.
So and we'll see you next time on the Dekoni Audio Podcast. Thank you.